Hi, it is Thursday. It is, I think it is, oh my gosh, it's April 30th, you guys. It's the end of the month. We all made it through April. How fantastic is that? Yay! Yay for us. All right. So, since today is Thursday, that means our class is for freshmen through senior. And today we are going to talk about flirting versus sexual harassment. If you would like to print off the materials and have them to go over with me while we do this, you can find it on Google Classroom. And the code for the class is A7HLZIS. A7HLZIS. All right, so if you want to print those off, you can. That's great. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. We're going to go through all of this together today. So let's get right to it. All righty. So flirting versus sexual harassment. All right. So let's talk about what sexual harassment is. What is it exactly? Well, sexual harassment is defined as any unwelcome or unwanted pressure, verbal, visual, or physical contact of any sexual nature. So any unwanted and unwelcome. Those are the key words: unwelcome and unwanted. Pressure, verbal or physical, visual, or physical contact of a sexual nature. It's a power play, and it may include touching someone inappropriately, spreading sexual rumors, repeatedly propositioning someone when he or she has said no, criticizing or insulting someone's sexuality, including a person's orientation, telling sexually offensive jokes, making comments about somebody's clothing or their body, making suggestive gestures or noises, standing or rubbing against a person, pressuring someone for a date. It can also be online stalking. That's not on this first handout. This first handout basically is about sexual harassment, and it kind of breaks down and defines what those things mean. That's not on there, but it can also any of these things can be done online, and it's still considered sexual harassment done online. So, what is meant by unwelcome? Whether or not a behavior is unwelcome depends on how the individual feels about how the other individual is behaving. So I get to decide for me, and you get to decide for you what is unwelcome. So if someone tells you that, you look nice and they're being nice about it and you like it, okay, so that's not unwelcome. It could just be a compliment. If somebody says something about the way your body looks and you're uncomfortable, that's sexual harassment. That can be considered sexual harassment, rather. So whether or not a behavior is unwelcome depends on how an individual feels about the way the other person is behaving. Two people may react to the same behavior very differently. One may take it as a compliment or not be offended, while the other may not want to be treated that way and feels uncomfortable. So the third question here, are schools required to have a policy regarding sexual harassment, and why? The answer is yes. Sexual harassment interferes with the right to a safe educational environment. In the United States, I have seasonal allergies and I keep feeling like I'm going to sneeze. So if I sneeze, don't be alarmed. I might be. Okay, so in the United States, it's a form of discrimination under Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. Every single school has a Title IX. This is to protect the students as well as to protect the teachers from any sexual harassment of any kind. Most schools, it's usually an administrator like a vice principal or a principal or a counselor who's your Title IX officer. But if at school you are feeling sexually harassed by another student or a teacher, or you're a teacher and you're feeling sexually harassed by another teacher or a student, Title IX is there to protect you. It is against educational policy for a teacher or any school employee to sexually harass a student or another school employee, and for a student to harass a teacher, a school employee, or another student. The most common type of sexual harassment in schools is student to student, and usually happens in public. Both male and female students report being targets of harassment, and both female and male students are harassers. It knows no gender. It just like sexual assault we talked about before. It doesn't know gender necessarily. It doesn't know socioeconomics. It doesn't know race. It doesn't. It just happens everywhere. Unfortunately, it just happens everywhere. Can it be considered sexual harassment if it's a one-time event? Yes. Sexual harassment can happen once or it can happen many times. Being the target of sexual harassment makes it hard to concentrate. It can make it scary to go to school. Incidents of sexual harassment may cause a person to feel uncomfortable, embarrassed, or threatened. So it can be a really, really big deal. Can a person be accused of sexual harassment even if the person did not intend to harass anyone? Yes. Someone may intend to harmlessly joke, tease, flirt with another person and not realize how he or she is making the other person feel. If you don't want to harass another person, or you don't want people to take what you are saying as harassment, you need to think about how your actions will be perceived, how they'll be received by the other person, and the effect it may have on another person. If it helps you to know the difference between flirting and harassment, flirting is wanted, it's returned, it feels good, it's complimentary, and it's legal. Harassment is unwanted, unreturned, it feels bad, it's usually a put down, and it's illegal. So somebody may accuse someone else of sexual harassment and may feel sexually harassed when the intention of the person was not to sexually harass that other person. So in a world where we love to have right, wrong, black, white, everything is what it is. We like to know what it is. We don't like gray area. We live in a world where there's a lot of gray area. So just really, really think about how what you're saying might be perceived or received by someone. If you were about to make a joke or say something to someone, think about how would I feel if someone said this to my mom, my sister, my brother, my cousin, my dad. That's good to think about. Would I want someone to talk to my grandma like this? No, probably not. But just think about it. And if the answer is yeah, then you're probably, going to be perceived well. If a person does not say no or object to a certain behavior, is it still harassment? Maybe. That's that gray area again. Maybe. We love yeses and nos, don't we? But we just don't live in that kind of world of human interaction. Excuse me. Pretty sure I was going to sneeze again, but I guess not. Seasonal allergies are fun, aren't they? Okay, so a person might be too embarrassed or uncomfortable or afraid to speak up. Often a first reaction is to just try to ignore the behavior, act like nothing is bothering you, nothing's unsettling, especially when there's a lot of people around. So for example, like when you're in the lunchroom or you're at a football game or something like that, if there's a lot of people around, most likely someone is just going to try to pretend it didn't happen or walk away. They might even try to nervously laugh it off. The person being harassed is hoping the behavior will stop if he or she does not react and may think it will only get worse if they do. In most cases, it only gets worse if it's ignored because the person who's doing the harassing doesn't realize his or her behavior is unacceptable, or they think it's acceptable. Sometimes the harassing person can just be following the crowd and not really thinking about what he or she is doing, or may think the person actually likes the attention. It can be very confusing for everybody involved. There's that gray area again. How can someone know if his or her behavior is sexually harassing if he or she is not told that his or her behavior is unwelcome? A person could ask the following questions of themselves if they say a certain comment, if a certain comment would be considered harassing to others. Would he or she want the comments or behaviors to appear in the newspaper or on television? Or would they want their friends and family to know? Would he or she say or do this if a parent, girlfriend, boyfriend, or teacher were present? Would he or she want someone to say or do this to their sister, brother, girlfriend, or boyfriend? If the person to whom he or she is saying or doing this is the person whom he or she is saying or doing this to in an equal position of power to him or her? We're going to get into why that's important in a minute. Do his or her actions show respect for the other person? So a few weeks ago, we talked about consent. There are nonverbal cues that nervous laughter is a nonverbal cue. Pulling away, looking confused, looking upset, walking away, saying everything is fine, but everything's not fine. So those are some verbal and nonverbal cues that maybe something that you said was not okay. Okay, moving right along. Number 8, if the behavior is not directed towards you, but you observe it and find it offensive and unwelcome, is it considered sexual harassment? Yeah. So regardless of whether the person experiencing the behavior finds it unwelcome or not, it is sexual harassment if it creates a negative environment for others. So remember, we were just talking about that lunchroom or being at a football game. If he or she is talking to another person and they say something that, maybe that one person doesn't feel it's sexual harassment, but they're with their friends might be equally as uncomfortable. There may be an issue. So just remember that a lot of this is critical thinking and thinking about what we say and how what we say and do affects other people, because we live in a world where there is human interaction and there's all that gray area. And so we have to be responsible for what we say and do and how it affects others. Whether you're particularly close to that other person or not, you can still make a pretty big impact in someone's life. So the last part of this first sheet about sexual harassment, number 9, who is responsible when sexual harassment occurs in schools? So again, we talked about Title IX. School district officials are legally responsible to guarantee an education for all students, which is free of sexual harassment and sexual discrimination. Some forms of sexual harassment are also crimes and should be reported to the police so the harasser can be prosecuted. That's one of those times where we've gone past that gray area and we know what's up. So there are a couple of types of sexual harassment that there's something called quid pro quo, and that is Latin for this, for that. And that one is like, okay, if you do this, then I'll do that. So for example, it's usually comes from people that are in a position of power over someone else, like a teacher or a coach or a foster parent or something like that. So, or a boss. So let's talk about schools for a second. Let's touch on that point just for a moment, that most every company that you're ever going to work for, no matter how big or small, also has sexual harassment policies. They may not have Title IX, that's just in particular for schools, but they will have a policy about sexual harassment. So you'll need to know, which supervisor deals with that. But a quid pro quo is basically demanding something for something else. So for example, you'll get an A in this class if you, have sex with the teacher. That is quid pro quo, this for that. Or you'll get that the shifts you want at work if you go on a date with me, or if you kiss me, said by your boss, that kind of thing. And that can create a really hostile environment that can be very confusing and embarrassing and just kind of awful. The other is something it's more direct. It's again, touching someone inappropriately, rubbing up against them. It's more blatant, it's more outright. And this happens more often than the quid pro quo. But remember that if somebody is in a position of power over you, then the dynamics change. So if you have, for example, a student to another student, a girl says to a boy, "You have a really nice behind." The boy might take it as sexual harassment. He might be really embarrassed. He might take it as a compliment. But those two are in an equal position of power. So they both share this equal power because they're both students, and they're both the same age in my scenario. If a teacher says it, there's an imbalance of power. If an administrator says it, there's an imbalance of power. So police officers, doctors, parents, coaches, teachers, those people are all in a position. If somebody is in a position of power over you, then it's definitely considered sexual harassment. I had a student once ask me, say you're in juvie and you're getting ready for court and you're putting on your suit and everything, and one of the COs gives you a razor and says, "You look nice with a shaved face. Is that sexual harassment?" I said, "Well, how did it make you feel?" And the student said, "Super uncomfortable." So there's two things at play there. The student felt super uncomfortable, and the CO was in a position of power over them. So they said, "Well, what if it was another person that was going to juvie with me, another inmate? Okay, how does that make you feel?" And they said, "Super uncomfortable." It's still sexual harassment. Sometimes things are a lot more blatant than other things. What does blatant mean? That means obvious. So sometimes things are much more obvious. You can tell when somebody's being sexually harassing. Sometimes things are more subtle. But if you feel uncomfortable with something someone is doing and you feel that you're being sexually harassed, that is valid. If you don't feel that you're sexually harassing somebody, you need to, and they said that you are, you don't get to decide how they feel. That's just the thing. If you hurt somebody, you don't get to decide that they're not hurt. What you have to do is be introspective. That's hard for some of us. Being introspective and saying, okay, what role did I play in all of this? If you really honestly did not mean to make somebody uncomfortable, explaining, "I'm so sorry about this misunderstanding. I did not mean to make you feel uncomfortable. It won't happen again." So an apology means nothing without changed actions. And that's true for anything, not just sexual harassment. An apology means nothing without changed actions. In fact, multiple apologies are just manipulation if you don't actually change your actions. All right, so the second one, flirting. It's very short. Flirting versus sexual harassment. So what is meant by unwelcome? Well, we talked about that. What is meant by unwelcome? It's something you don't want. These are all questions that we already went through. Okay. I'm not sure why I printed this off. Don't worry about this one. All right. So we're going to move right on to this last one. It's only one page, and it is what to do if you are sexually harassed. Okay. If you are sexually harassed, when confronting a harasser or taking steps to address sexual harassment, it's important to be aware of the liabilities involved in that process. Any person sexually harassing someone may be trying to determine whether the target of the harassment is also a viable target for sexual assault. So this may be some kind of grooming technique that a predator is using to sexually assault someone at its worst. Therefore, a person should carefully assess the level of danger and threats presented by the harasser and proceed cautiously Teens, don't confront your harasser alone. Be accompanied by a friend, or better yet, or trusted adult. Whether this is a teacher, a counselor, a parent, a trusted adult, and preferably a trusted adult that is level-headed, hopefully somebody who's objective and can help. That's always ideal. If you are sexually harassed, you are not to blame for what happened to you. You are not to blame. Harassment is unwanted. It may make you feel scared, embarrassed, helpless, and trapped. You certainly did not ask for any of those feelings. Just like sexual assault, this is not your fault. You can keep a written record of incidents, including what happened, where and when the incident occurred, and who else was present, and indicate how you reacted. Save any notes or pictures you receive from the harasser. Keep this record separate from your diary and other personal papers in case you have to show your notes to someone else. So this is when harassment is ongoing, whether it's in person, whether it's online, or whether it's on the phone, or whether it's all of those things. Definitely keep documentation every single time. Where were you? What time was it? Were there other people around? What exactly was said? How exactly did you feel? How exactly did you respond? If you responded at all. We talked about before how this can happen online as well. So be sure to take screenshots, especially on things like Snapchat. If you're being harassed on Snapchat, where something might disappear pretty quickly, take a screenshot before it does. And again, so when it says to keep those records away from your personal diary or other personal papers, that means if it's ever subpoenaed for court, if it becomes something that becomes big enough that it has to go to court, you don't want your other personal papers and your diary and other things like that to be subject to that subpoena. You don't want them to be read by other people. So keep those away from those other areas. All right. You can tell someone if you're being sexually harassed, and keep telling people until you find someone who believes you. If you start by telling a friend and they don't believe you, keep telling someone. Talk to your trusted adults. Find supporters and talk with them about what's happening. Before you decide to take action, discuss the problem with your parents or an adult that you trust, one of your trusted adults. You can contact a sexual assault crisis center to gather information, receive legal and personal advocacy, and emotional support. So Beyond Survival, this channel where I work, has amazing advocates who can talk to you about what your, they can tell you what your legal options are. And they're also great for that emotional support and having somebody that you can trust to talk to, somebody objective who has all the information. Advocates are amazing people who have loads and loads of information. And they understand, and they have time to listen and to help you gather resources for yourself. You can write a letter to the harasser describing the behaviors in which you consider to be harassment, saying that these behaviors bother you and that you want them to stop. Keep a copy of your letter and keep it with that other documentation. Write the letter with the help of an adult advocate and have the adult hand deliver the letter. Have an adult hand deliver the letter to the harasser so the harasser takes it seriously. This again, if the harassment's been going on, this can be, and only do this if you feel safe in doing so. If you feel that something may lead to assault, whether it's sexual assault or physical assault, don't do it. Don't write that letter. You can let the harasser know you don't like the behaviors or comments. It's best not to confront a harasser alone, particularly if the harasser is a teacher, another adult, or a bully. If it is a student and you feel safe and comfortable doing so, bring a friend or a trusted adult and tell the harasser that his or her behavior needs to stop. So this is somebody, for example, in your friend group, and you feel that you can talk to them, do so. Sometimes people really don't know that what they're doing is affecting other people around them. We have to stop and think about how might this affect someone else? If it wouldn't affect me that way, it will affect somebody else differently. But if you feel safe talking to this person and saying, I'm really not okay with it, I need you to stop, then that's a great idea. And it helps you tap into your own power. And we love that. We're powerful. You are powerful. You are powerful. If the harasser is a teacher or other school employee, speak with your counselor or another adult and resolve it together. Because it may seem harder or more frightening to bring a complaint about a teacher or somebody in power. You may want to bring a parent or supportive adult. If you've been harassed in school, you can file a complaint. Again, that's your Title IX protections. Now you can file this complaint with your school board, or state board of education. If you feel that your school or your school board hasn't taken it seriously, you can go to the state board of education. A complaint can be against another teacher, student, or school employee. If you feel uncomfortable reporting alone, again, bring a friend or a trusted adult. Remember, you have the right to go to school in a safe and comfortable environment. You have those rights, and you are powerful. You are powerful people. Every school has this, K through 12, as well as college campuses. So for you seniors that are getting ready to go off to college, they have Title IX protections as well. They have those as well. And there is usually somebody, a Title IX officer for every single, that's their only job at every single campus. Sorry, again, I have seasonal allergies, so I keep feeling like I'm going to sneeze. Okay, all right. So that is flirting versus sexual harassment. Basically, flirting is something that is complimentary. It's welcome. It's not offensive. If you're hanging out with your boys and you're telling jokes and everybody thinks it's funny, that's perfectly fine. If you're hanging out with a group of people that you're not sure that everybody is going to think your jokes are funny or whatever, maybe don't tell them. Read the room. Read the room. Decide if this is a good idea or not, if this is a good time. And again, it's a lot of critical thinking about how do my actions affect other people? Am I affecting people in positive ways? Am I affecting people in negative ways? And think about the things you say and the nonverbal and the verbal cues that you get from others. Again, it's a lot of gray area. Golly, there's a lot of stuff out there that just is tough. It's tough to understand. So if you have questions, drop them in the comments below. I would love to hear them. If you are interested in speaking to an advocate, you can reach out to Beyond Survival. Lead advocate, I think it's lead advocate at Beyond Survival. Or actually, this is better. Admin, A-D-M-I-N, admin at ghbeyondsurvival.com. Admin at ghbeyondsurvival.com. This is what happens when you go live. You don't always get things right. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, or you can email Beyond Survival if you'd like to speak to an advocate. Again, you have a lot of rights. You are powerful, and you deserve to go to work and to go to school in places where you feel comfortable. So next week is going to be my last online session, as far as I know, at least for now. I thoroughly enjoy getting to hang out with you guys every Thursday, you 9th through 12th graders. For you seniors that are getting ready to graduate, you have such an amazing world ahead of you. And I'm so, so excited for all of you. It's so exciting. All right. So I will see you next Thursday, you guys. And in the meantime, remember to be kind and wash your hands. All right.